This very special program you're about to see was originally produced as a video for the medical community. We feel the quality and subject matter are so important that this program deserves a wider audience. Anyone who comes into contact with a child could find their lives and the child's life changed by watching Is My Baby Okay?
Movement. When it develops normally, it presents a child with unlimited possibilities. These could be the hands of a sculptor, a surgeon, or a star quarterback. These legs might bear the weight of a future prima ballerina. The strength in this baby's arms might one day hold aloft a baby of his own. Because of movement delays, not all children experience normal development. The challenge facing today's health professional is to identify at the earliest opportunity those infants exhibiting abnormal movement patterns. By doing so, we will have taken a major step toward ensuring that all children will experience a world full of possibilities. This process often begins with the parent's first question to their doctor. Is my baby okay? Parents often are the first to know that something is wrong. They may wonder why their baby is stiff, difficult to feed, or never smiles. Today, experts agree that when parents and health professionals work as partners, the early warning signs of movement delay can be detected, and treatment can begin as early as 3 to 6 months.
How do you recognize early warning signs? We believe there are two simple and readily available tools that, used separately or together, will alert the health professional to possible motor skills problems: observation and concern. That is, the professional's own power of observation and the concern voiced by parents about their children's development. First, the parents.
Ricky was around 3 months old. We were going to adoptive meetings with other adoptive parents with children Ricky's age, and that's when I first noticed that Ricky wasn't doing the two-handed manipulation that the other children were doing. I brought this to the attention of my pediatrician, and he said, let's just see what's going to happen. Don't worry about it. Let's see what happens next month. Let's see what happens the month after. At 5 months old, he said, wait till he's 6 months old, then we'll talk about it. If we don't see any improvement. 2 days after I brought him back from his visit with the pediatrician, he wasn't using his left hand. He was laying in his crib, swatting his toys with his right hand. I got so aggravated that I found the largest handkerchief I could find to tie his right arm down to force him to use his left arm. And then I said, before I even started doing this, and I've got the handkerchief over him, I said, you're losing your mind. And I called the pediatrician, and I said, get me to a neurologist, give me a name. I can't stand it anymore.
Mrs. Carl's baby was eventually diagnosed as having cerebral palsy. Parents today are more knowledgeable about their infant stages of development and often carefully monitor their child's progress. So how important is it when a parent shows concern? Dr. Jack Boehm.
Most parents don't voice concern over their child's development unless they really have something that's concerning them about that development. So it's very important that the pediatrician be very attentive to what the parent is saying.
Parents trust their health professional. If the professional fails to share the parent's immediate concern about a child's development, the parent might go home with a false sense of security about their child's condition.
Of course, you take your child to your doctor and you voice your concerns, and what does a mother want to hear? She's fine, give her time. So she looked fine. I mean, 10 fingers, 10 toes. So I was, oh, great. The doctor says she's fine, so I go home and I'm happy.
So at 6 months, we went to the pediatrician, and I again stated my concerns and said, I'm getting much more concerned because here this twin right in front of me is doing all these things. And I knew Patrick was motor advanced, but still, I also knew that we were starting to get delayed in some things. And he said, no, he really wasn't concerned at all, that, it would be something to watch, but he really wasn't concerned.
What follows is a role-playing exercise that demonstrates the kinds of communication that can occur between a doctor and a parent. Notice whether the doctor listens to what the parent is saying and how the doctor attempts to satisfy this parent's concerns.
Okay, let's roll Bobby over onto his stomach.
Okay. You know, Doctor, I keep waiting for him to roll over by himself.
Well, he'll do that soon enough.
But my friend says her son is sitting up already, and he's the exact same age as Bobby.
Well, Mrs. Pearson, each child develops at his own pace. And Bobby's going to be rolling over soon enough, and then you're going to have to worry about him rolling right off the bed.
Though the doctor may be right, he did not really answer the mother's concern. It would be more helpful if the doctor responded to her this way.
You don't seem too convinced about my reassurances. There's something else you're concerned about?
Well, he seems very moody.
How do you mean?
He cries a lot more than other babies I've seen. I don't know when it'll start or even if I can console him. And you know, I'm not the only one who finds him so challenging.
Well, let's do this. Bring Bobby back in 3 weeks instead of the normal 3 months. And between now and then, I'd like you to keep a diary. Keep track of his moods, his movements, things that might concern you. And that'll help us with our evaluation.
If it is decided that intervention is needed, the opportunity has been created for the child to receive therapy 2 months earlier than if the doctor had waited until the next well-baby visit. Sometimes a parent's concerns and a doctor's own observations warrant the doctor recommending more immediate action.
You seem awfully concerned about Bobby's development.
Well, you know, with my other kids, when they were Bobby's age, they seemed stronger, you know, more able to do things with their arms.
His movements were a little stiff. Do you ever have any trouble when you're diapering him?
Well, yes, quite often, now that you mention it.
Well, I'm not sure any of this indicates a problem. But just to be on the safe side, why don't I refer you to a specialist? He could do a complete exam on Bobby.
Great, I'd like that.
If this child was developing abnormally, then by really listening to the parent, the health professional has created the opportunity to intercede before the child develops additional abnormal movement patterns. Mrs. Maganite, you remember, voiced her concern about her infant's development at 6 months. Listen to how her physician responded when she brought the child back at 9 months.
Okay, when I took the boys in at 9 months, I mentioned all my same concerns that I had said prior to him and said, now there are big differences, and he put Peter on the examining table and he turned to me and he said, I blew it. I should have listened to you at 6 months.
Many times, however, a parent can't recognize early warning signs of developmental problems and must rely on the expertise of the health professional.
Well, Carolyn's my second child, and I really thought that she was developing faster than my first child. She was very erect. She held her head up much sooner than Stephanie did. And when you look back, those were all signs of problems rather than something to be bragging about.
In this case, it was my thinking that there was no problem. Our pediatrician never really said there's a big problem. It's just children grow out of low tone. But let's give them that edge and get them into therapy.
He's an excellent pediatrician. I just don't think that he knew what to look for with Lindsay. And I think had he been able to notice those little telltale signs in order to diagnose something like this, that he would have immediately said, you know, Jill, I think something's not right and we should look into it right away.
Mrs. Levinson is right. Observation skills are critical in assessing atypical motor development. This is Dr. Elsbeth Kern, a pediatrician from Bern, Switzerland. Dr. Kern first realized the critical importance of early intervention over 35 years ago in order to provide atypically developing infants with the opportunity for the earliest possible intervention. She began to conduct an exam that relies on the observation of movement and postural alignment. Pediatricians around the world have benefited from her experience and training.
We have learned we get much more information from observation.
We are trained to do an active physical examination, performing certain procedures on the patient, such as listening to the heart, listening to the lungs, looking in the ears and the throat. And part of the value of Dr. Kern's assessment techniques is strengthening the importance of what we observe. The observation skills are much more important and reveal much more information than we were ever led to believe.
The exam that follows is a condensed version of that used by Dr. Kern. The child's movements are observed as the child progresses through 8 standard positions: supine, sideline, prone, pull to sit, sitting, standing, horizontal suspension, and protective extension. In these positions, the health professional should look for variability in the movement of the baby, muscle tone, tightness or floppiness of muscles that would interfere with normal movement patterns, and the ability to move against gravity. In our exam, we will be comparing and contrasting the movement of 2 babies. Zachary, 6 months, is healthy and developing normally. All the movement highlighted in our exam is typical for the baby's age and is necessary for continued normal motor development. Michael, 6 months adjusted age, has been assessed as exhibiting atypical motor development and has been referred for therapy. First, in supine, notice that Zachary is able to maintain his head in midline while exhibiting anti-gravity movement of his arms and legs toward midline. Also, he is capable of pelvic lifting. However, Michael has difficulty maintaining his head in midline, with few anti-gravity movements of arms and legs. He's unable to lift his pelvis. Also note the fisting of his hands. When Zachary is presented an object, he maintains an anti-gravity position of the arms and legs while grasping for and playing with the object. He also continues to maintain his head in midline. Michael is incapable of grasping the object and continues to demonstrate asymmetrical positioning of the head and upper extremities. When tracking a moving object, Zachary is able to follow that object from side to side, 180 degrees across the midline. Michael can only partially track the object and has difficulty tracking beyond the midline. As Zachary rolls to prone, he continues to utilize anti-gravity arm and leg movement. This activates abdominal muscles to initiate the weight shift to rolling. As he passes through sideline, lateral head and trunk righting are needed to complete the movement. Michael's inability to perform anti-gravity arm and leg movements prohibits activation of abdominal muscles necessary to initiate weight shift for rolling. Also, the asymmetrical head position interferes with this movement. When movement is facilitated, Michael assists in rolling to sideline, and his head turn and midline orientation of the arms are seen. However, his inability to laterally flex head and trunk prevents completion of the roll, trapping his arm. Hand fisting continues. Zachary is able to maintain a sideline position while manipulating and playing with an object. This indicates balance between back extensors and abdominal muscles. While Michael is able to maintain a sideline position, there is increased extensor tone, particularly evident in neck hyperextension and retraction in the non-weight-bearing arm. In prone, Zachary demonstrates strong extension and abduction in the hips and lower extremities. This becomes the stabilizing base of support and allows head and trunk lifting, and the ability to move the arms forward to reach for and play with objects. Michael, because of inadequate hip extension and excessive flexion abduction of the lower extremities, is unable to bear weight on extended arms or lift his trunk from the support surface. This frog leg position prevents side-to-side weight shifting necessary to develop forward reaching. Zachary's ability to laterally weight shift is possible because of the extension-abduction position of hips and lower extremities. This allows for the lateral head and trunk righting and frees his non-weight-bearing arm for forward reaching. For Michael, the excessive flexion abduction in the hips and lower extremities prevents a stable base of support, causing shifting of his weight forward. This inhibits head and trunk lifting and prohibits forward arm reach. When pulled to sit, Zachary starts with shoulder elevation to initiate movement. He is able to lead the movement with good forward flexion of his head. Notice the chin tuck. There is activation of abdominal muscles and hip flexors. At the end of the movement, Zachary is able to maintain his head in an upright position. Michael attempts to stabilize with a shoulder girdle because of poor control of the neck muscles. There is no chin tuck, and he has excessive head lag throughout the entire maneuver. Also, there is no participation of the abdominal muscles or lower extremities. When he reaches the upright position, neck hyperextension and poor head control are observed. In supported sitting, Zachary is able to come forward to reach and grasp for a toy. He is then able to return to an upright position to play with the toy. Notice the good back extension while maintaining the head in midline. In order to prevent falling forward, Michael uses excessive neck and upper back extension, reinforced by scapular retraction. This excessive extension and asymmetrical arm position prevents forward reaching. Also, the strong extensor tone makes it impossible for him to maintain an upright sitting position as he attempts to re-right himself. His inability to maintain a sitting position indicates a lack of balanced abdominal and extensor muscle control in the trunk. When standing, Zachary maintains good head, trunk, and hip alignment. He is also able to bear weight on flat feet, and he demonstrates movement in his legs. Notice that he moves his arms freely in space while maintaining good back extension. Michael requires more trunk support to maintain an upright position and is unable to maintain his head in midline. You can also observe the influence of asymmetrical tonic neck reflex on the upper extremities. He is unable to bear weight on flat feet. By looking at Michael from the side, you can observe his inadequate hip extension. This results in hip flexion, which causes forward tilting of the upper trunk and head. In horizontal suspension, Zachary maintains good alignment of the head, trunk, and hips using strong extensor muscle activity. There is a variety of upper and lower extremity movement against gravity. Michael exhibits inadequate neck, trunk, and hip extension against gravity, which interferes with his ability to produce a variety of arm and leg movements. Once again, we witness the influence of asymmetrical tonic neck reflex on his upper extremities and his inability to maintain head in midline. In protective extension, Zachary is able to bring both arms spontaneously forward to protect himself against downward movement. During the movement, he continues to maintain anti-gravity head, trunk, and hip alignment and a good midline orientation of the head. Michael's inability to bring his arms forward is directly related to the inadequate anti-gravity extension he demonstrated in horizontal suspension. In addition, the asymmetrical tonic neck reflex also interferes with his ability to bring arms to midline for a protective response. What if the exam reveals atypical movement patterns? For an accurate diagnosis, a pediatric neurologist, developmental and behavioral pediatrician, or a physiatrist should be consulted. However, the first consideration should be for therapeutic intervention. Dr. Nelson.
The basis for early referral, diagnosis, and intervention is to prevent a small problem from becoming a large one. And if we don't have that crucial component of diagnosis yet, but we have all the warning signs to indicate the need for referral and multidisciplinary assessment, and then we see some basis for therapeutic intervention, I think that in general the standard in the field is to proceed and hope that we can cause some improvement in the child sufficient to prevent the diagnosis from being applied.
Well, I think it's extremely important to encourage physicians to establish a relationship with a physical therapist in which they can talk about how to get the treatment children need early while not unnecessarily worrying the parents during a time when the diagnosis may indeed be uncertain. The child with cerebral palsy moves in patterns that gradually stiffen the muscles more and more. When the child is motivated to move, however, he is going to try to find a solution to this problem of a body that can't be controlled in the way that it should be. And that solution usually is to move in very limited ranges, to be safe, to not take chances that normal children do when they move. And his range becomes more restricted, his muscles become tight, and he doesn't have the opportunities to experience the variety of movement that actually is usually possible. Therapists set up a treatment environment that is a play-like environment that's fun for the child, which is motivating, which is extremely important, and give them supports in particular parts of their body where maybe they're having more trouble than another part that then lets them move more freely. We might take them through a movement by handling them to give them the experience of a type of movement that they haven't ever experienced before, and gradually build strength, which is very important in children with cerebral palsy. If movement is hard, they tend not to move enough, and so they get weak. There are many secondary complications like weakness and tightness that can be prevented. We can't totally keep those muscles from getting tight, but with early therapy we can definitely, I think, create a better alignment for sitting, for standing, for all kinds of movements that are very important for children.
These children may not act or feel comfortable when held closely. These children may be too comfortable and unresponsive or under-responsive when held and talked to by parents. These children may express difficulties in feeding, swallowing, sucking, spitting, that the typical child may not express to such degree. These children may not be as communicative, even early on, with regard to earliest cooing sounds that are made, eye contact that is shown to parents because they are simply uncomfortable.
The approach we basically take is prevention at the risk of some false positives. That is, a child who may initially look very abnormal, then we recommend therapy, the child starts receiving some kind of intervention, and if 6 months later we can't find anything at all wrong with that child, the progress is good in every single area, we're willing to say this child is ready for discharge from therapy, rather than making the alternative error, which is a false negative, where we assume the child's normal even though there are risk signs present, and just keep on following the child, waiting for it to get bad enough for us to refer.
It was very beneficial to get Ricky in physical therapy as early as I did because, one, he didn't have bad habits to unlearn, or he didn't have many bad habits to unlearn. We got him in before he started walking and before he started crawling, so we could teach him how to crawl and walk, which he had to be taught.
Poor patterns weren't allowed to be formed, and therefore, because we were right there, we were able to stop, block, and those kinds of things from happening and accelerate the positive kind of moves that should be made in order for him to do the kinds of things that he should be doing as he grows up.
We're really grateful to our doctor who recommended Brian to therapy at 6 months of age. It's made an incredible difference in Brian's development, and its early intervention has meant an incredible difference in our family's life.
Early assessment and intervention can and does make a great difference, and nobody is in a better position to make that difference than the health professional providing care for the infant. When professionals really listen to a parent's concern and take the time to critically observe movement patterns when an infant is only 3 to 6 months old, a child is being given the best opportunity to receive the care he or she needs in order to achieve optimum functional potential. Dr. Peter Gorski.
Movement helps children to become effective. effective in exploring their world, effective in communicating with others, and effective even about expressing their feelings. When children do feel as though they are competent, then they also take great pride in themselves and pleasure in their lives. Early diagnosis and intervention has tremendous impact. Children learn about themselves very early in life. They learn how competent they can expect to be, and they learn how people expect them to act, how much success they're expected to have. The earlier that a child experiences success in life, the more likely that child is to believe that success is within their ability. A child's future is bright to the extent that that child feels hope about himself and about his life. Pediatricians have the very noble opportunity to provide that hope to the child through the family by listening to them seriously, by respecting their experience and concerns, and by evaluating with good judgment the health and development of the child as he grows.